have started just now, or you have?
Just now.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So today we will deal with the topic disposal of carcasses. So when we talk about disposal of carcasses, what is important is to examine the animal and then decide whether the carcass can be disposed of or not. And if it is to be disposed of, in which manner should it be disposed? So while we will be dealing with this topic, we will be taking into account the inspection or examination of the animal as well as the techniques involved in carcass disposal. Please move to the next slide. Okay, so when we say of examining or inspecting the animal, we consider it in two stages. First is in the antemortem examination stage, and the second is the postmortem examination stage. Now, the basic difference in these two stages is that antemortem examination takes place before the animal is slaughtered. It takes place when the animal is alive, and we mostly depend upon the clinical signs and symptoms exhibited by the animal. Whereas in case of post-mortem examination, the examination takes place after the animal has been slaughtered and bled. And in this case, the animal undergoes a thorough or complete examination of each and every organ separately. Okay, and we look for the pathological signs and symptoms of a particular or any disease it has been exhibiting. Now, in post-mortem examination, it is important to mark the animal as well as carry it on in a thorough manner. Moreover, post-mortem examination aims at looking for diseases which are subclinical in nature. That is, the animal is suffering from the disease, but no clinical or visible signs and symptoms are not present. So, post-mortem examination mainly focuses on subclinical diseases. Okay, is it clear to everyone the difference between antemortem and post-mortem examination? Okay, so we move to the next slide. Now, when it comes to antemortem examination, it is basically carried on in two stages. One is the stage first, which is conducted in the lairage, and it takes place in a group. So when an animal is resting in a lairage pre-slaughter, so what happens is the animals are observed, and then it is seen whether the animals are healthy or not. And at that point of time, the healthy and unhealthy animals are segregated or differentiated. Now in stage 2, what happens that each and every animal is seen or examined individually. So what happens that in stage 1, we will see for generalized symptoms like whether the animal is stressed or not, is he lethargic or not, and if any exceptional or any big kind of wound is there. Whereas in stage 2, what we see is, we'll see for skin lesions, we'll see for aberrations, we'll see for tumors, pox, and things which will not be visible to the naked eye from a distance. Is that clear, the difference between stage 1 and stage 2? Okay, so when we consider antemortem examination, there are basically 3 outcomes. First is animals which are allowed for slaughter or they are fit for slaughter. Second is emergency slaughter, or an animal which is not made to wait further and are slaughtered immediately. Now, mostly those animals who are in intense pain big enough or pain high enough or intense enough that keeping the animal alive is against animal welfare than slaughtering it. In those conditions, the animal is slaughtered on an emergency basis. Now, situations such as fractures, bloat, tympani prolapse, these are considered under emergency slaughter. And then comes not allowed for slaughter. Now, when we choose an animal that it should not be allowed to slaughter, we basically divide it into 2 parts or into 2 sets. One is suspected, another is unfit. So when we say that animal is not allowed for slaughter, we take it under the suspect provision. And under the suspect provision, what we see is that the animal is detained or it is quarantined for a particular period of time. Now, within this period, situations such as curable diseases or mild symptomatic symptoms or poisoning these outpass, and once these outpass, the suspected animals are further sent to slaughtering once they turn healthy. But if the animal is emaciated or it is showing signs and symptoms of some particular notifiable diseases, which I'll take later on, or any communicable diseases or diseases which cannot be treated, then we finally mark the animal as unfit for slaughter and that animal is discarded or disposed of. Please move to the next slide. So as I told you, fit for slaughter, that means animal is normal and free from any symptoms of disease, and that animal can be further moved on for slaughtering purpose. Then comes emergency slaughter, when animal is in acute pain, the pain is intense and delay in slaughter will be contrary, will be against the well-being of the animal. Then comes suspected, in which animal is detained for a particular period of time and it is treated as well. And if the disease passes by, it is known as fit for slaughter. And if the disease is there or it still remains, if it still infects the animal, then it is considered as unfit for slaughter. And the last one is unfit for slaughter. That is, the animal is in a very bad shape. It is emaciated and it is suffering from some form of notifiable or communicable disease which cannot be treated. Okay. Till this slide, any confusion?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Then we move to the next slide. Now, as we said, notifiable diseases. In the previous slide, I discussed about notifiable diseases. So notifiable diseases are those diseases which, when seen or which, when observed, needs to be notified to the authorities as well as from the place where the animals have been purchased or outsourced. Because these diseases are mostly communicable between humans as well as animals, and they create a havoc by since they have a large mortality rate or a very high mortality rate. So the diseases which are notifiable, and in India, those are anthrax, black waters, foot and mouth disease, hemorrhagic septicemia, rinderpest, rabies, Jones disease, tuberculosis, glanders, farcy, epizootic lymphangitis, surra, and pori. So out of these 12 diseases, if any disease is observed in any animal in antemortem examination, then what we do is that we we discard the entire lot and we notify the authorities, that is the authorities of the slaughterhouse as well as the authorities from where the animals have been outsourced. And depending upon the disease, the mode of disposal of carcass is determined. Now we will discuss the mode of disposal in the later on slides. So you just take a note of the notifiable diseases here, and we'll now move to the next slide. Any confusion regarding notifiable diseases? Okay, then we'll move to the next slide. Okay, so after we have conducted the antemortem examination, we go for the decision that it is either unfit for slaughter or suspected for slaughter. Okay, for those which are not allowed for slaughtering. So this unfit for slaughter or suspected for slaughter is basically dependent upon the changes we observe in an animal, that whether it is turning into a healthy animal or not, or in some cases, we also depend on the post-mortem examination of the animal to decide whether the animal is fit for slaughter in later on stages or unfit for slaughter. So these are the diseases which I have mentioned, which are unfit for slaughter as well as suspected for slaughter. Now, in unfit for slaughter, you can see that most of the notifiable diseases are there, like rabies, anthrax, FMD, BQ. Whereas for suspected slaughter, we mostly see that the disease is localized in condition. For example, actinomycosis, it is lumpy jaw. So if we discard that particular part of the carcass, then rest of the carcass may be used. Then you can see there is mastitis or actinobacillosis, and localized tuberculosis is also there. Localized tuberculosis is there, that the pathological lesions are localized or are concentrated to a particular organ. organ and has not spread to the entire animal or to the entire system or more than one organ. Is that clear? The difference between unfit for slaughter and suspected for slaughter?
Yes, ma'am.
मैम
मैम काल्फ डिप्थेरिया क्या है मैम?
डिप्थेरिया डिजीज है.
काल्फ डिप्थेरिया
ये डिजीज है जो काफ में पाया जाता है. ठीक है. हाँ, आप बता रहे थे कुछ सुभद्रा, कोई कंफ्यूजन? हेलो
मैम लोकलाइज्ड ट्यूबरकुलोसिस और जनरलाइज्ड ट्यूबरकुलोसिस. हाँ मैम.
हाँ,
हेलो.
देखिए लोकलाइज्ड ट्यूबरकुलोसिस में क्या
मैम वो
होता है.
पूछ रहे थे ना कि
हाँ, लोकलाइज्ड ट्यूबरकुलोसिस में क्या होता है कि जो ट्यूबरकुलोसिस है, जो उसका पैथोलॉजी, जो उसकी पैथोलॉजिकल सिम्टम्स है, दैट इज ट्यूबरकुलोसिस. हाँ, वो क्या होते हैं, वो एक पर्टिकुलर ऑर्गन में ही मिलते हैं, ये एक पर्टिकुलर साइट पे ही मिलते हैं. और अगर हम उस ऑर्गन या उस साइट को बाकी कार्कस से सेपरेट कर देते हैं तो फिर उस कार्कस को हम आगे यूज कर सकते हैं. बट इसी केस में अगर मान लीजिए कि जो ट्यूबरकुलोसिस है वो जनरलाइज्ड हो गया, मतलब एक से ज्यादा सिस्टम में पाया जाता है. मान लीजिए हमने ट्यूबरकल्स लिवर में भी पाया और किडनी और लंग्स में भी पाया, तो फिर क्या करते हैं कि एनिमल को टोटली डिस्कार्ड कर देते हैं. ठीक है.
यस मैम.
Okay. Any more confusions? Okay, so we move to the next slide.
मैम स्वाइन इरेप्सिलिसिस क्या था? स्वाइन करके वो क्या होता है?
वो भी एक डिजीज का नाम है और उसको मैं बाद में थोड़ा सा डिटेल में डील करूंगी. ठीक है. ये आप डिजीजेस के नाम याद कर लीजिए, बिकॉज यहाँ पे तो मैं आपके संग सारे साइंस एंड सिम्टम्स शेयर नहीं कर पाऊंगी. you'll study about them in your coming years in medicine course. Okay. ठीक है. So पोस्टमार्टम एग्जामिनेशन. अब पोस्टमार्टम एग्जामिनेशन में क्या होता है कि पोस्टमार्टम एग्जामिनेशन में हम मोस्टली उन डिजीजेस को टारगेट करते हैं जो हम which we are not able to see in the live animal. Okay. So mostly those diseases which are not visible in the live animal in naked eyes, that is in those diseases which are in subclinical condition, those are targeted for post-mortem examination. Now in post-mortem examination, each and every tissue or organ is seen separately. It is a critical step and it needs to be followed in a systemic manner. Like there is a particular manner in which the post-mortem examination is to be conducted. The main point to be noted while conducting a post-mortem examination that it should be conducted as soon as possible post-slaughter. Like after the animal is slaughtered, post-mortem examination, thorough post-mortem examination should be conducted as soon as possible. Now, for post-mortem examination, the animal is conducted under the light intensity of 540 lux or 50-foot candles, and the use of laboratory tests may be taken into consideration. Is that clear? Okay, then we move to the next slide. Now, as I told you that the post-mortem examination is done in a systemic manner. That is, we follow a particular flow or line of action while conducting post-mortem examination. So the line of flow is head, then we examine the viscera, then come lungs, then heart, liver, kidney, then we examine the spleen, then we move to small stomach and intestine, then we move to the urinary bladder, then uterus, ovaries and testicle, that is the organs of the reproductive tract. Then we look for, we inspect the udder, and finally we see the carcass or muscles and bones as a whole. Now, after this examination has been done, or the carcass and the muscles of the carcass and bones have been examined, we then go for inspection of neat lymph nodes. Now, neat lymph nodes are those lymph nodes which represent the condition of the carcass, and these lymph nodes varies along with the species. So, like for instance, in cattle and buffalo, the meat lymph nodes are prescapular, axillary, prefemoral, popliteal, and ischiatic. Whereas for sheep and goat, it is prescapular, popliteal, and prefemoral, and for pig, it is popliteal and prefemoral. So if we examine these particular mentioned lymph nodes, what happens is that we get to know the actual condition of the carcass. Okay, so if in any condition we see any form of inflammation or pathological change in these lymph nodes, then special attention is given during the inspection and the animal is further tested for presence of a particular disease. Is that clear to everyone? Okay, so depending upon the postmortem examination, there are basically 4 types of judgments which are passed. One is the animal is passed for further processing, and then comes totally condemned. We find pathological lesions on a generalized manner and the carcass is totally condemned. Then comes partially condemned. We find pathological lesions related to any disease in a particular region in that carcass, and what we do is we remove that particular region and rest of the carcass is used for further processing. That situation is known as partly condemned, and then it is conditionally condemned. Conditionally condemned is that we condemn one part of the carcass and rest of the carcass is used, but it may not be used for eating purpose or meat purpose, but some other purpose. And moreover, in such carcasses, we depend extensively on laboratory tests determining the condition of the carcass. Is this slide clear to everyone? Okay, then we move to the next slide. Now, as we said that, please move to the next. Okay, now as we said that the postmortem examination is a thorough examination and each and every organ is taken into consideration separately, and depending upon the target organ, we perform particular tests or particular examinations. So organ wise, we will deal that what are the pathological lesions we target for, and depending upon these pathological lesions, we will decide whether a carcass needs to be disposed of or not. So when it comes to the head region of the carcass, we first test the tongue, and for tongue we target lesions related to foot and mouth disease, stomatitis, actinobacillosis, and in case of pigs, trachinellosis. Now in case of trachinellosis, the base of the tongue is examined for the presence of lesions related to trachinellosis. Then comes the masseter muscles. Now the masseter muscles play an important role in taking into account a pathological condition known as measly beef, or in cattle and buffalo, and measly pork in pigs. Now, if we examine the masseter muscles and look for cysts of Cysticercus bovis in case of cattle and buffalo, and Cysticercus cellulose in case of pigs, if these are present in the masseter muscles, then we count the number of cysts present. If the number of cysts is more than 10, then the carcass is totally disposed or totally condemned. And if the number of cysts is less than 10, then what is done, that the part of the carcass having the cyst is removed and rest of the carcass is sent for further examination and processing. Here at the head portion, the lymph nodes examined are retropharyngeal, submaxillary, and parotid. And here we target the diseases which are tuberculosis and actinobacillosis. Then comes the lungs. At the lungs, we target pleurisy, pneumonia, tuberculosis, fasciolosis, and hydrated cyst. And the lymph nodes taken into consideration are bronchial and mediastinal lymph nodes. And these lymph nodes mostly depict the presence or absence of tuberculosis. Then comes heart. For heart, we look into tuberculosis, pericarditis, petechial hemorrhages, and cysts. Okay. Is this slide clear to everyone? Okay, then we'll move to the next slide. For liver, we look for fatty changes, pathological symptoms related to actinobacillosis, abscesses, parasitic infection, cyst of Cysticercus bovis, fasciolosis, hydrated cysts, esophagostomum infection, and nematodal infection. For spleen, we look for pathological lesions related to anthrax and tuberculosis. In stomach and intestines, we look for pathological infections related to tuberculosis and actinobacillosis. In uterus and ovaries, we look for septic conditions. Next, in udder, we look for pathological lesions related to mastitis, presence of abscess or tubercles in case of tuberculosis. And when we look for the carcass as a whole, we look for situations such as bruising and generalized edema. Please move to the next slide. Okay. Now, till this point, is everything clear? That in which organ we target which disease and how it is seen? Is that clear to everyone? Okay. So now in case of pigs, the head and the skin is an important part of the carcass. So in case of pigs, the skin is also examined for lesions and conditions. And the target condition, pathological conditions are erysipelas, urticaria, swine fever. Okay, in these situations, we find pathological lesions, red hemorrhagic spots or tubercles on the skin of the animal. And if it is seen, then the animal is discarded. As we have discussed earlier, in pigs, the external masseter muscle is looked for cysticercal cellulose, and the base of tongue is looked for seen for the presence of trichinella species. Now, one of the most important things while conducting a postmortem examination is that one should never open a carcass without the permission of a veterinarian. A process as simple as flaying should be disregarded if a veterinarian does not permit. Okay, is this clear to everyone till this part? Okay, so we move to the next slide. Now, as I had discussed earlier, that after this step of postmortem examination, after the carcass as a whole has been observed, we target on the lymph nodes, meat lymph nodes. Now, these meat lymph nodes are particular lymph nodes which, if showing any inflammation or pathological changes, then special attention is given to the animal during the time of its inspection. As I have mentioned earlier, different species of animals have different lymph nodes which are important to the condition of the carcass. In cattle and buffalo, there are 5, which are prescapular, axillary, prefemoral, popliteal, and ischiatic. In sheep and goat, there are 3, which is prescapular, popliteal, and prefemoral. And in case of pig or swine, it is popliteal and prefemoral. Okay, I guess this is clear and easy enough. Is it clear to everyone? Okay, so then we move to the next slide. After going on through a thorough antemortem and postmortem examination, we can basically decide that whether an animal as a whole or a part of it, or the carcass as a whole or a part of it, needs to be disposed of or not. Now, there are a few techniques of disposal or condemnation of meat and the carcass. So first of all, and the most common, is a burial method in which the animal is buried, and it is a small scale process. Then comes burning or incineration, where the animal is burnt. Then comes chemical method, where the animal or where the carcass is treated with chemicals and then disposed of. Rendering, composting, and landfill. We'll discuss all these methods in detail in the upcoming slides. Now we can see we have a few options of how we want to dispose or condemn the carcass, and we choose these methods depending upon the sources we have, and depending upon the number of animals we are dealing with. So coming to the next slide, the method of the disposal are impact on environment. We will not look for any form of disposal system which creates a negative impact on the environment. Like, for instance, if we have animals in the number of hundreds and we think of burning the animals, now what happens? Smoke is there, and that may be bad for the environment. Or we go for chemical mode of disposal, and the outcome is not, and the outcome of that disposal is not properly treated, and it is dangerous for the water bodies or the livestock or humans living near it, then these things need to be discarded or need to be not considered. Okay, so we look at the impact on environment, that the system we are adopting should not impact the environment on a negative manner. Then potential number of animals involved. Like for instance, I did talk about that the burial method is for animals is practiced when the number of animals are less. But when the number of animals are more, then we go for processes such as composting and landfilling. So depending upon the number of animals involved, we choose the
मैम
method of. हाँ बताइए.
पूरा नहीं समझ में आ रहा, कुछ नहीं, इम्पैक्ट ऑफ ऑन एनवायरनमेंट ये सब कुछ नहीं समझ में आ रहा.
ठीक है, इम्पैक्ट ऑन एनवायरनमेंट का यूज करेंगे सो दैट, जैसे मान लीजिए बहुत सारे एनिमल्स हैं 100 के ऊपर और हम उन्हें जलाने की सोचते हैं, तो क्या होता है कि जो एनिमल है, जो जब हम एनिमल जलाएंगे तो बहुत सारा धुआं उड़ेगा, स्मेल होगा, तो वो एनवायरनमेंट के लिए खराब है, उसमें उसमें एनवायरनमेंट का नुकसान होगा, तो हम वो तरीका यूज नहीं करते हैं. ठीक है, इस तरीके से हम इम्पैक्ट ऑन एनवायरनमेंट देखते हैं. या मान लीजिए कि हमारे पास एक एनिमल है और हम उसे केमिकल मेथड से डिस्पोज ऑफ कर रहे हैं, केमिकल मेथड से उसको मतलब उसको हम हटा रहे हैं. इससे क्या होगा कि मान लीजिए अगर हम कोई ऐसा केमिकल मेथड यूज करते हैं जिससे एनवायरनमेंट पे इफेक्ट पड़ेगा या जिससे पॉइजनिंग हो सकती है या और भी एनिमल और ह्यूमंस इन्फेक्ट हो सकते हैं, तो वो हम मेथड यूज नहीं करेंगे. सो हम ये हमेशा देखेंगे कि जो हम मेथड यूज कर रहे हैं फॉर डिस्पोजल, उसका इम्पैक्ट कैसा है. ठीक है
मैम तो बैरियल करेंगे मैम, तो 5-6 एनिमल के लिए तो ठीक है, ढेर सारा रहेगा मैम तो लैंड भी तो ज्यादा चाहिए मैम.
हाँ, वो मैं आपके साथ डिस्कस बाद में करूंगी, और वो लैंड मेथड भी यूज वहीं पे करेंगे जहां पे लैंड अवेलेबल होगा. ठीक है, वो भी नीचे वाले पॉइंट्स पे हैं
मैम
वो मैं
बोन को तो डिस्पोज होने में भी समय लग जाता है उसमें.
हाँ, वो सब देखिए, हर डिस्पोजल के टेक्निक्स जो है उनमें हम डिकम्पोजिशन रेट को कंसिडर करते हैं, एंड जैसे जैसे टेक्निक्स हम यूज करते हैं उनमें जितना टाइम लगता है डिस्पोज ऑफ होने में, वो भी हम कंसिडर करते हैं. तो बहुत सारे फैक्टर्स हैं जिनको हम एक साथ कंसिडर करते हैं एंड फिर डिस्पोजल मेथड को डिसाइड करते हैं. ठीक है, सेकेंड था पोटेंशियल नंबर ऑफ एनिमल्स. जो मैंने बोला पोटेंशियल नंबर ऑफ एनिमल्स, मतलब अगर मान लीजिए कोई एक फार्म है जहां पे हार्डली 5-10 एनिमल है जो कि डिस्कार्ड किए जाते हैं डेली, तो फिर हम एक पर्टिकुलर टाइप ऑफ मेथड यूज करेंगे. लेकिन अगर वही स्लॉटर हाउस दिन में 50, 60, 70 एनिमल्स हैं जो डिस्कार्ड करता है, तो फिर हम अलग टाइप ऑफ डिस्पोजल मेथड यूज करेंगे. It depends upon the number of animals getting involved. ठीक है, क्लियर हो गया?
यस मैम, यस मैम.
Then comes the third point, impact on trade and economic implications. So impact on trade. Now, if we look for a disposal method which is very expensive, okay. So now comes the third point, that is impact on the trade and the economic implications. Now we will take that method into consideration where their financial binding or economic loss is minimum to the industry, to the slaughterhouse, as well as to the unit which is involved in disposal of the carcasses. ठीक है? Then comes fourth point, animal welfare. Animal welfare, we will choose a method in which animal welfare is taken into consideration, that is, no harm is done to the animal pre disposal or at the time when it's alive, as well as at the time when it is dead. Okay, then characteristics of pathogenic organisms. Now different pathogenic organisms have different characteristics. Some are thermophilic in nature, some are mesophilic in nature. So depending upon the characteristics of the pathogenic organism, the method of disposal is decided. For instance, if an animal is infected with anthrax, then incineration is practiced and burial method is discarded. Okay? Then disease control implications. What comes under disease control implications is that each and every kind of disease has a particular disposal method mentioned. So depending upon the disease, the disposal method is taken into consideration. Then comes impact on individual producers. This point is quite equivalent to the impact on trade and economic implications. We will look at the factors that it is not that the method of disposal is not burdening the individual producers. Last comes second last comes financial and logistics consideration. Now, for instance, methods such as incineration involves incinerators, and each and every farm or each and every slaughterhouse does not have the facility of an incinerator. So what is there that we have to carry the animals from the slaughterhouse to the incinerators. Now we have to see that whether the logistics, that is whether vehicles or carriers are present to take the animals from the slaughterhouse to the incinerators, and the amount of money involved in this transport. So financial and logistics consideration. And last comes reaction to the public. We always have to opt for techniques which do not create any kind of public backlash. For instance, if we go for chemical disposal, what we do is we treat the carcass with strong alkalis, and then that treated carcass is disposed of in sewages. So now sewers. Now what happens is that some of the public might retaliate to it, and they might not consider it to be safe. So in that cases, other forms of disposal such as burning, such as incineration or composting should be taken into consideration. Clear? Now comes to the next. Now let's come to the next slide. Now there are certain points that which are to be remembered. First is infected animals should be removed promptly. Dead and infected animals should be removed as soon as possible from the alive or uninfected animals or carcasses. Second is never open the carcass without the permission of a veterinarian. I have discussed this. Please mute your audios. Please mute them. Never open the carcass without the permission of a veterinarian. I have discussed this topic previously. Second is no dragging of dead or deceased animal. If we drag a diseased
माइक ऑफ कर लो यार.
If we drag a diseased animal, what happens that the fluids or the excretions, they get smeared on the floor, which might not be visible, and they might become a source of infection. So one should avoid dragging the diseased animal. Fourth is dead body is never disposed near water bodies. So we should always discourage the disposal of dead bodies near water bodies, as it may infect the water body, and the water body may become a new source of infection. Fifth is disinfect the spot where the animal has lived. This step is taken to avoid any form of further spread of infection. Sixth, before disposal, keep here it is written animal, the word should be carcass. Keep the carcass on a dry surface and cover it with polythene sheet. This is also taken to avoid the further spread of infection. And it is covered with a polythene sheet so that airborne spread of infection or spread of infection due to scavengers is minimized. Next is protective clothing for persons involved in this activity. Some of the diseases have the ability to spread from animals to humans. So in order to reduce the chances of infection between animals and humans, the personals dealing with discarding the dead or condemned carcasses should be provided with protective clothing. Eighth is, condemned parts of the carcass should be lifted mechanically. Manual handling of condemned carcass should always be avoided, and if we want to lift them or transport them, it should always be preferred to be done mechanically. Then second last point, vehicles involved should be exclusive and covered from all sides. This is very clear. Those vehicles which are involved in transportation of condemned meat should never be used for any other purpose. Like, we cannot transport meat fit for human consumption in the vehicles which are involved in transporting condemned carcasses to disposal centers. Moreover, it should be covered from all sides so that airborne spread of infection or activities such as scavenging can be discarded. Okay. Then the last one is disinfection of the vehicles, instruments, and animal houses. This point is clear in itself, that the vehicles involved in the transportation of condemned carcasses, the instruments involved in the process, and the animal houses where the infected animals were living, those should be sterilized. Okay, clear?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, now please stop the recording. Okay. Okay, so now, as we had discussed earlier, there are certain disposal and condemnation techniques for meat and carcasses, and these are a few techniques which I had discussed previously. That is the burial method, burning or incineration method, chemical method, rendering method, composting method, and landfill method. So depending upon the requirements or availability in the farm or in the slaughterhouse, these methods are adopted. So as we had discussed upon the factors influencing method disposal, those factors will be taken into consideration, and then the carcass will be disposed or condemned using any one of these particular methods. Moving to the next slide. Okay, so now comes the first method of disposal, that is burial of carcass. Now, in this technique, it is a very, very easy and most used technique, and mostly it is used for animals when the number of animals needed to be disposed are in singular, like 1, 2, 5, 6. Singular number of animals are to be disposed of. In burial technique, what we do, we dug a pit which is a minimum of 2 meters in depth, and then we dump the dead animal in it. Before dumping the dead animal in it, we slash its skin and drench the animal with crude phenol. Then we put the animal in the pit in a manner that its highest part is 1.5 meter below the ground level. Okay, that is the maximum height of the animal. It should be at a depth of minimum 1.5 meter from the ground level. Then the animal is covered with lime. Along with the animal, the leftover feed, bedding, excreta, and even the top 5 centimeter of the soil where the animal used to live or where the animal has been treated, even that is removed and dumped into the pit. Then after all these things have been dumped into the pit is filled with mud, and a heavy concrete object is kept on the pit so that none of the wild animals are able to take out that dead animal from the pit. Okay, is this process clear? Okay, now in case of anthrax, what we do is that since anthrax is a highly communicable disease of zoonotic importance, when we suspect that the animal is dead from anthrax, all the orifices of the dead animal is plugged with cotton soaked in 5% cresol solution. Okay, and even the whole body or even the whole carcass is covered with a bag soaked in 5% cresol solution. Is this part clear? Okay, so we'll move to the next part. Next slide, please. Now comes incineration of the carcass.
मैम
The incineration. हाँ,
एंथ्रेक्स में क्या करेंगे मैम कॉटन से?
एंथ्रैक्स में करेंगे क्या, जो एनिमल है उसके जितने भी ऑरिफिसेस है लाइक नोज, माउथ,
यस मैम,
एनस,
उसमें
इन
कॉटन
सब
बॉल
में क्या
डाल
कर,
देंगे।
उसमें कॉटन बॉल डिप्ड इन 5% क्रेसॉल, ठीक है।
यस मैम,
क्रेसॉल में डिप किया हुआ कॉटन बॉल को उसके अंदर डाल देंगे, उन ऑरिफिसेस के अंदर, और जो एनिमल है उसको भी एक कपड़े से कवर कर देंगे जो कि 5% क्रेसॉल में सोक किया हुआ है, ठीक है।
यस मैम।
Okay, moving to the next slide. Now comes the incineration technique. In the incineration technique, we focus on burning the animal. Now, for this, we require incinerators, special equipments used for burning dead bodies, and it operates at a temperature of 600 to 800 degrees centigrade. Now, this technique is very useful as the high temperature is able to kill each and every kind of organism, even prions and anthrax causing organism, that is Bacillus anthracis, which are heat resistant. And most of the disposal techniques fail in case of prion and Bacillus anthracis, but incineration is a sure shot technique to kill these microorganisms. Now, in case if incinerators are not available, then what we do is that at the spot of incineration, we dig a pit which is 0.5 meter deep, and in that pit, we put wood or any inflammable material. Above that pit, we hang the animal which needs to be burnt in such a manner that it remains suspended on a hook, but it does not touch any of the surrounding surfaces. And then the animal is burnt till it is charred or till it is completely turned into carbon. Is this clear? Is this clear to everyone? Okay.
एंथ्रेक्स में मैम जला भी देते हैं। हाँ,
क्या बताइए फिर से?
मैम एंथ्रेक्स किसी एनिमल को होगा मैम,
हाँ,
तो उसको तो सिर्फ हत्थी ना करेंगे मैम, बरियल मेथड ना अपनाएंगे।
नहीं, अगर एंथ्रेक्स के एनिमल को हम बरियल मेथड से डिस्पोज करते हैं तो बरियल के टेक्निक्स जो है वो लेंगे, लेकिन एंथ्रेक्स में जो बर्निंग है, इंसिनरेशन नॉट बर्निंग, इंसिनरेशन, वो इम्पोर्टेंट होता है, ठीक है। तो इंसिनरेशन जो है वो एक फुल प्रूफ टेक्निक है, मतलब उसमें जो ये स्पोर फॉर्मिंग बैक्टीरिया है वो मर जाएगा 100%।
यस मैम, ये तो बढ़िया है।
ठीक है, तो बरियल में हम अलग टेक्निक यूज करेंगे, इंसिनरेशन में अलग टेक्निक यूज करेंगे। क्लियर हुआ?
यस मैम, दोनों में से कोई भी यूज कर सकते हैं।
हाँ, कोई भी यूज कर सकते हैं। हाँ बताइए सुभद्रा,
इंसिनरेशन में क्या डिफरेंस है मैम?
दोनों कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट टेक्निक्स हैं।
मैम बर्निंग वुड द्वारा यूज करते हैं ना बर्निंग में मैम,
हाँ,
और
हाँ बर्निंग में वुड यूज करते हैं।
इंसिनरेशन में इलेक्ट्रिसिटी वाला ना।
हाँ, कुछ वो कोई भी सोर्स हो सकता है, सोर्स ऑफ हीट। तो बर्निंग क्या कहते हैं, बरियल एक अलग टेक्निक है, इंसिनरेशन एक अलग टेक्निक है, वो डिपेंड करता है कि आप कौन सा चूज करना चाहते हैं। ठीक है,
यस मैम।
ओके, कमिंग टू द नेक्स्ट। हाँ बताइए।
में क्या बेनिफिट है अगर जैसे कि एंथ्रेक्स को, ऐसा तो एंथ्रेक्स को नहीं बोलते हैं, मतलब ये बरियल मेथड से करते हैं, ये करने के लिए डिस्पोज करने के लिए
प्रेफर नहीं किया जाता है बरियल मेथड में। जो एंथ्रेक्स का वो है कारकस है, एंथ्रेक्स इन्फेक्टेड एनिमल है या उसका कारकस है, वो बरियल मेथड में प्रेफर नहीं किया जाता है। ठीक है, बट अगर हम बरियल करेंगे तो हम एक मिनट कुणाल, सॉरी कृष्णा, मुझे बोलने दो, मैं बोल लेती हूँ। तो बरियल मेथड में क्या होता है कि हम एनिमल को, अगर एंथ्रेक्स में बरियल मेथड इज नॉट preferred, but if we carry on burial, then we will follow the steps which I had mentioned related to 5% cresol. And if incineration is practiced, then it is better, and we will follow these techniques for incineration. ठीक है?
मैम तो हम
क्योंकि
ये
हर
पूछना चाह
जगह
रहे हैं ना,
इंसिनरेटर प्रेजेंट नहीं हो सकता है। हाँ
नहीं
बताइए।
होता है, तो जैसे
हाँ
जैसे बरियल करेंगे, ये सॉरी बर्निंग अगर करेंगे एंथ्रेक्स वाले एनिमल को, और
हाँ,
इंसिनरेशन करेंगे एंथ्रेक्स वाले एनिमल को, तो बर्निंग में रिस्क का चांस होगा ना ज्यादा मैम?
नहीं,
तो
यहाँ
उस
पे
तरह से
इंसिनरेशन का मतलब है बर्निंग। इंसिनरेशन में तो बर्निंग ही होता है ना, आप एक पर्टिकुलर टेम्परेचर में ले जाते हो ताकि वो जो पर्टिकुलर मटेरियल है, कार्कस है, वो जल जाए। इंसिनरेशन में आप एक टेम्परेचर 600 टू 800 डिग्री सेंटीग्रेड का टारगेट करते हैं, ठीक है।
अच्छा,
यस
और
मैम।
तो
ऐसे
जब उस
सिंपल बर्निंग
टेम्परेचर
के
में
लिए?
हम कार्कस को डालेंगे तो वो ऑटोमेटिकली बर्न हो जाएगा, है ना। ओके, एंड बरियल टेक्निक में क्या होता है कि मान लीजिए इवन
मैम
आप
बरियल नहीं
किसी,
बोल रहे हैं मैम, बर्निंग बोल रहे हैं, बर्निंग। जैसे कि आप बरियल तो आप बता ही दी, ठीक है, उस तरह
हाँ,
से कुछ उसका टेक्निक लेके करेंगे एंथ्रेक्स वाले को तो ठीक है, लेकिन ऐसे
हम्म,
सिंपल बर्निंग और इंसिनरेशन दोनों में क्या
हाँ,
डिफरेंस आएगा एंथ्रेक्स
हाँ,
वाले डिजीज को करेंगे तो?
that
एंथ्रेक्स,
I am discussing in the very next slide. आप नेक्स्ट स्लाइड में जाइए, आप समझ जाएंगे। Please move to
ठीक
the
है
next
मैम।
slide. Then comes the pyre burning system, the burning system you were talking about. Okay, so pyre burning system is an open system of burning the carcass where the carcass is drenched with a fuel like petrol or diesel or kerosene. It is drenched with a fuel and then it is set on fire. Now in the pyre burning system, the spot in which the animal is dead, in that very spot the burning is practiced. Okay, so in this system what happens, there is one plus point that we need not to transport the animal from one side to the other, so the spread of infection is reduced. But since the animal is in contact with the surface, ground surface, and we use fuel to burn the animal, it may happen that all the pathogenic organisms present are not destroyed totally, because every pathogenic organism is destroyed at a particular temperature. If by chance that particular temperature is not reached, then those organisms will not die. Moreover, since we practice burning and use of fuel, there is a lot of pollution. So due to this pollution, and since there is no guarantee that the organism is being totally destroyed, this system of disposal becomes environmentally hazardous. Okay, and it is a very slow process, because a particular carcass has a dead carcass has a lot of moisture and organic material, and the temperature reached by the fuel is not too high, so the burning process takes a lot of time, so it is also time consuming. So because of all these factors, it is a less acceptable process. Now burning process is clear. Is it clear to everyone, the difference between burning and incineration? Okay,
yes,
so we'll move to the next slide. Then comes another form of disposal, which is the chemical method of disposal. So as the name suggests, chemicals are used to dispose of the carcass. Now this method, the chemical disposal method, is used in cases where the carcass does not possess any potential health hazard, like the about potential health hazards, those diseases or those microorganisms which are of zoonotic importance or which have the capability or capacity of infecting other organisms as well. Those health hazards are not there. Only in such cases, chemical disposal of carcass is practiced. In chemical disposal, mostly we rely on strong alkalis like sodium hydroxide and potassium hydroxides. The carcass is treated with sodium and potassium hydroxide under high temperature and high pressure, and then the whole carcass is digested. As a result, a effluent is formed. Okay, the chemicals plus the carcass undergoes digestion, and then an effluent is created. The pH level of this effluent ranges from 11.4 to 11.7, and then this effluent is just discharged into the municipal sewage system. Now, since it's a very sophisticated system, so what happens is that we require expensive equipments, and since it is an expensive technique, so its application is also limited. Moreover, what happens that in some places the public goes against it because they are skeptical or they are doubtful about the quality of the sewage and what kind of health hazard potential it possesses. Now it's clear? Is this clear to everyone? The chemical disposal of carcass?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then
NaOH
we
और KOH में डीप करेंगे ना मैम?
से रिएक्ट करके उसे डाइजेस्ट करेंगे अंडर हाई टेम्परेचर एंड हाई प्रेशर. ठीक है?
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है. Then moving to the next slide, that is rendering. Now, I think so you have dealt with the topic of rendering. So, what does actually rendering mean? Rendering means to remove oils from a particular object. It can be bone, it can be carcass, it can be anything. So it is one of the most economical methods. Why? Because since the carcass which has been discarded, we can put it under rendering machine and we can get a number of products, byproducts or outputs which are of economic value. For instance, we can get tallow or fats, and the leftover materials can be used as meat meal, bone meal. Okay, so what we have, we get outputs of economic importance. Now in this case, since these are disposed of or rejected carcasses, what happens that the tallow or the oils we retrieve from the rendering process, this will not be used for any form of edible purpose. It will only be used in soap industries or any other industries where the fats are not, where edible quality fats are not used. Now, is this clear? So what happens is, in this particular technique, the carcass is taken and is crushed into small pieces of uniform size. And mostly in this method of rendering, the dry rendering technique is used. So here, the cut off or crushed carcass is heated to a temperature of 130 degrees centigrade and a pressure of around 60 to 80 psi for a time period of 3.5 hours. Under this pressure, the carcass is treated, the fat and the proteinaceous matter and water are separated, and the resultant material can be used as meat meal or bone meal. Okay. Now, the rendering technique fails when prions come into play, because prions are not destroyed in this rendering technique. So whenever there is a carcass affected with prions, like bovine BSE causing organisms, bovine, spongiform, myeloencephalitis, myeloencephalitis, these kind of organisms are involved, then we will not use rendering, rather we'll go for incineration. Okay? Now what happens is, there are a few drawbacks in this process. One is, one should possess a rendering plant which is exclusively maintained for disposed carcass. So this is a point where the producer or where the slaughterhouse owner may find an economic constraint. Secondly, the product used cannot be used universally. The product produced cannot be used universally. Okay, like the product produced has limited application in the industrial purpose. You cannot use the fat for edible purposes, and the meat meal produced is of inferior quality. Secondly, the product produced sometimes faces recontamination by Salmonella species. So the product does not have a very good viability, and transportation cost is also one of the important costs which need to be added. Is this clear? Now there are a few environmental concerns regarding
मैम
rendering.
एक बार फिर से बता दीजिए मैम रेंडरिंग.
हाँ ठीक है, ये लास्ट पॉइंट डिस्कस करके फिर मैं आपको फिर से बताऊंगी. Now there are a few environmental concerns regarding rendering. What happens in rendering is that when the product is rendered, gas and odor are emitted. So this is taken as an environmental concern. So this can be overcome up to the extent of 90% if we use techniques like cold water washing, scrubbers and biofilters. Okay, ठीक है, मैं इसे फिर से एक बार समझाती हूँ. रेंडरिंग का मतलब क्या है? तेल निकालना. तो हम क्या करेंगे, जो कार्कस है उसको हम छोटे छोटे टुकड़ों में काटेंगे या ब्रेक करेंगे या उसे क्रश करेंगे. फिर उसको हम ड्राई रेंडरिंग उसमें प्रैक्टिस करते हैं, जिसमें हम कार्कस को अंडर सील्ड कंडीशन 130 डिग्री सेंटीग्रेड पे हीट करेंगे एट अ प्रेशर ऑफ 60 to 80 psi फॉर अ टाइम पीरियड ऑफ 3.5 आवर्स. क्लियर हुआ? जब हम ये ट्रीट करेंगे तो क्या होगा, फैट, प्रोटीन एंड वाटर जो है वो निकल जाएगा और एक प्रोडक्ट रह जाएगा, क्रैकलिंग्स रह जाएंगी, जिससे हम मीट मील या बोन मील की तरह हम यूज कर सकते हैं. अब जो प्रोडक्ट इससे निकलता है इस रेंडरिंग से, उसमें एक डिसएडवांटेज ये होता है कि कई बार उसमें साल्मोनेला रीइंफेक्शन देखने को मिलता है. एक और डिसएडवांटेज ये रहता है कि क्योंकि ये डिस्पोज्ड ऑफ कार्कस से मिलता है, तो जो फैट या प्रोटीनेशियस मटेरियल निकलता है वो हम एडिबल क्वालिटी के लिए कंसिडर नहीं कर सकते हैं. वो सिर्फ सोप इंडस्ट्री में ही यूज किए जा सकते हैं. ठीक है? और जो मान लीजिए किसी एनिमल की डेथ हुई है प्रायर इन्फेक्शन की वजह से, तो उन कार्कसेस में हम रेंडरिंग प्रैक्टिस नहीं कर सकते हैं. उनमें हम सिर्फ और सिर्फ इंसिनरेशन मेथड ही यूज करेंगे. जब हम रेंडरिंग करते हैं तो क्या होता है कि गैस और ओडर प्रोड्यूस होता है, जो कि ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल कंसर्न होता है. एनवायरमेंट मतलब उसको अच्छा नहीं माना जाता है, वो एनवायरमेंट को डिग्रेड करता है. तो उसको ओवरकम करने के लिए हम क्या करते हैं कि हम कोल्ड वाटर वॉशिंग, स्क्रबर्स एंड बायोफिल्टर्स यूज करते हैं. एंड ये टेक्निक्स यूज करने से जो एनवायरमेंटल कंसर्न है लाइक गैस एंड ओडर, वो अप टू 90% रिड्यूस हो जाते हैं. ठीक है? क्लियर हो गया? क्लियर है?
यस मैम, यस मैम.
Okay, then moving to the next slide. So the other techniques, the two last techniques of disposal are composting and landfill. So there is one in both composting and landfill, what we do is that we bury the animal under soil. Now landfill is similar to the burial technique, but landfill is practiced on a larger scale. Like when the number of animals is more than tens, like 20, 30, 50. So landfill requires a large area and specialized equipments. Like if we have to dig a large area, we'll need specialized bulldozers and drilling machines. Okay. Moreover, if large number of animals has to be disposed of in the landfill, we will require machines, cranes to dispose of those animals. Okay. So is landfill technique clear? That in landfill technique, what we will do, we will take the disposed carcass to a particular site in closed vehicles. In those closed vehicles, what we will do, that we will then dispose of those dead carcasses in landfill sites or sites which have been dug specially to decompose animals. So those pits will be filled up with dead and infected carcasses, then soil will be put on it. Okay. Now, one of the biggest risks is related to transportation, because since there is movement from a particular point to the point where landfill is being practiced or they are being dumped, so there are chances of spread of infection during the transportation. So what happens is that we use covered vehicles during this process, so that airborne transmission of particular infections or microorganisms or spread of infection by scavengers is minimized. Landfill is clear? The landfill topic is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then coming to the composting technique. Now in composting technique, what happens, that the carcass is layered, and over and between the carcasses, carbon-rich materials like straw, sawdust, rice husk is given as a layer as a cover. Okay, clear? Now this layering in large carcasses is single. Like for cattle, buffalo, sheep, pig, goat, single layer of carcass is there. Whereas for small carcasses, multi-layer is practiced. Now over each carcass, sawdust or straw is a covering of sawdust or straw is given. And in case of multi-layer, even between the layers, sawdust and it is covered by sawdust and straw, carbon-rich materials. Then these are covered in an airtight area. So mostly we use closed houses for composting purpose. One of the important points to be considered during composting. Okay. So what happens is composting is that we make the animal lie down on a layer, and over that animal a layer of carbon-rich substrate, that is straw and sawdust, is made. And then this entire pile is set up in an area which allows escape of air but does not allow seepage of moisture. Now the base of such an area should be impervious, that it should not leach into the soil. So mostly the underlying layer is either has a plastic sheet which is impermeable to moisture, or is made of concrete. Now in case of large animals, the layer of animals is single layered. So large animals include each and every animal other than poultry, like sheep, goat, cattle, buffalo, pigs, calf, every other species. Whereas for small animals, that is for poultry, multi-layer of animals can be disposed of. Now composting takes place in two processes. There is stage 1 and there is stage 2. What happens is in composting is that there is microbial decomposition of the carcass. Now in stage 1, that is the thermophilic process, the rate of microbial decomposition is high, and the internal temperature of the carcass or decomposing carcass reaches to a temperature of 70 degrees centigrade. Now this process is carried on for a few weeks time period. Then comes the stage 2, that is the mesophilic process. Now in this mesophilic process, what happens is that the carcass temperature is reduced to 30 to 40 degrees centigrade. Please mute your audios. Please mute your audios. So why this temperature comes down? This temperature comes down because the rate of decomposition also reduces. Please mute your audios. Okay. So what happens is at the mesophilic phase or at the mesophilic process, the decomposition continues at the temperature of 30 to 40 degrees centigrade, and this phase lasts for a few months. Now, during this decomposition, what is to be done is that the whole pile is to be turned a few times so that aeration is there and the growth of Salmonella bacteria is restricted. Okay. Now, the main part is played by the thermophilic phase, where the internal temperature of the carcass reaches up to 70 degrees centigrade. It is at this phase that the pathogenic activity of various pathogenic microorganisms get destroyed. Okay, is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then moving to the next slide. Now there are a few important which are to be taken into mind while adopting the landfill or the composting techniques. First is avoid carcasses affected with prion and spore forming bacteria. So since the landfill or the composting, the highest temperature reached is around 70 degrees centigrade, and prions and anthrax causing or spore forming bacteria are not destroyed at 70 degrees centigrade. So this method of disposal is to be avoided when a carcass or an animal is infected with prion or spore forming bacteria. Second, composting or landfilling is undertaken on an impervious base. That is, the base of that particular area should be impervious. That is, it should be either concrete or covered by a polythene. Impervious base is important only for composting, not for landfill technique. Okay. Third, it is practiced away from livestock production units. This point is taken into consideration so that there is no spread of infection to a healthy population, livestock population. Fourth, vehicles associated should be disinfected and sanitized after every trip. So composting and landfill are spot related areas. Like, you cannot practice composting or landfill any place you wish. You have to have a particular spot of disposal. So we have to we have to transport the carcass from the point of from the slaughterhouses to the point of disposal. The vehicles associated with this transport should always be disinfected and sanitized after every trip. Fifth point, site for landfill and composting should be downward from the residential area. Downwind from the residential area means that the air should first cross the residential area, then it should cross the compost area, not the other way around. Otherwise, there can be spread of infection through air. Okay, is this clear? Like in cases where the air flows from east to west direction, so the population should the situation of the population should be situated, then the composting or landfill area should be present. Okay, is this clear? Sixth is, site should be at least 1 meter above water table level and at least 90 meters away from water bodies. This point is clear enough. The site should be above 1 meter above water level and 90 meters away from water bodies, so that there is no contamination of the water bodies by the microbes infecting the carcass. Okay. Second, preferably tried indoors with gas permeable covers. As I had discussed earlier, that composting should be practiced in places which are covered. Air can escape, but water cannot seep in. And last point, to avoid Salmonella species, the growth pile should be turned and aerated. This has also been discussed previously, that the composting, the material which is getting composted should be turned at regular intervals so that Salmonella infection does not grow. Okay, clear? Now moving to the next slide. Post-disposal disinfection. Now, a few points have to be taken into mind so that disinfection can be practiced in slaughterhouses post the carcass has been destroyed. First is, bedding, straw, manure, etc. are buried, burnt, or disinfected by mixing with slaked lime. Slaked lime is calcium hydroxide. Okay, so the bedding, straw, manure, all the things related to the infected animal should be either buried or burnt or disinfected with slaked lime. Second, liquids like blood, urine, and excreta should be disinfected with 30% solution of chloride of lime. Chloride of lime is calcium chloride. This point is clear enough. All the excreta, liquid, and all the bodily fluids of an infected animal should be treated with 30% suspension of calcium chloride. Then comes post-disposal of carcass. The premises should be cleaned either with lime water at 1:20 concentration or with suspension of bleaching powder 1:20 concentration. I think this is also clear. The next come all the metals, tools, hooks, handles, instruments which have been involved in the disposal process should be disinfected either by immersing it in boiling water or by treating it with 3% solution of washing soda, that is sodium carbonate. I guess this point is also very clear. And the last one is metal parts which are being used in the handling and transportation of the dead disposed of carcasses should be treated with phenol or cresol. Is this clear? Moving to the next point, next slide. So the best choices for disinfectants are either 0.5% of sodium hypochlorite, 10% bleach, 70% alcohol, borax, or 5% cresol. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Recording off karo.
Yes, please stop the recording.